Have you ever been going through a life transition? You're thinking about maybe a new job or a relationship change, or you have an empty nest and you're looking for a new purpose. And so you're going through the motions of trying to make this choice about what your next step should be, but it feels really hard and difficult. Maybe you end up snapping at someone when you didn't mean to, or you break into tears because some song comes on the radio while you're driving home, or you just feel like everything is really heavy right now. It turns out that when we're in a life transition, there are a lot of things that are happening that make it emotionally difficult. In this video, I'm going to explain what to expect, what's totally normal, and how you can get through this time without emotionally falling apart. Stay tuned. So here's what most of us don't realize when we're going through life transitions. When we're in these places where things are shifting, our emotions often get louder before anything else in our lives changes. It's like we haven't made the change yet. You haven't taken the new job. You haven't changed the relationship status. You haven't moved somewhere yet, but all the emotions are coming up anyway. Actually, that is perfectly normal. It is typical for all the emotions to start ramping up before anything really changes at all. So that doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong in this transition you're going through. It simply means that your inner world is already adjusting to something new because it knows that something new is coming up. And this is because a job change, a relationship shift, or new direction in life isn't just a practical decision. It affects so many things about our emotions. And that includes how safe we feel in our lives, how steady we feel, and even how we see ourselves. So when those things start to shift within us, our emotions typically react first. So we might feel anxious, sad, irritable, or overwhelmed without really understanding why. That's why this phase can feel so difficult, because we're carrying uncertainty, loss, and possibility all at the same time. Part of us is letting go of what we knew, and another part is trying to imagine something different, and the nervous system is stuck in the middle, and it's doing its best just to try to keep up. What usually makes this worse is how fast we tend to judge ourselves for feeling this way. So we assume we should just feel calmer and clearer or more confident by now. But unfortunately, transitions don't work like that. They're disruptive by nature. They ask more of us emotionally than we expect they're going to. So if you've been wondering why this phase feels so emotionally hard, there's a reason for that. And actually, there are a few reasons. And once you see them, then this experience starts to make a lot more sense. So the first reason this is difficult is because we're losing something before we gain anything. So even when a change might be something that we want or that we would choose, there's still loss involved because we're letting go of the old routines or the old roles or the old version of our life. Even if it wasn't perfect, it still gave us structure and we kind of knew what to expect. And we might have felt secure there or safe there, even if we didn't feel, alive there. So when we're even contemplating a change, or even when our intuition already knows that something's changing even before we do, that feeling of loss tends to show up immediately. For example, imagine someone going through a job change. So you might still be employed or actively looking for a new job, but you've already lost the identity and the sense of competence that came with your old role. So you don't yet have the confidence or the stability in what's coming next. So emotionally, you're standing in this empty space for a while. And that can feel really unsettling. Being safe is something I think that becomes way more important to us than we understand. Because in our world today, most of us feel generally safe. It's not like we're living like our ancestors did, where we have to worry about being eaten by a tiger or something, right? So we're a lot safer than we used to be thousands of years ago, but evolutionarily, we're still mostly concerned, our inner systems are, with survival. And so the brain is always going to push us to seek out safety, to seek out security. And so anytime that we're thinking of making a change, in any type of way that threatens that safety, we're going to feel this emotional response. We're going to feel the loss of that certainty, of that stability, of that security. Second, any type of uncertainty tends to drain our emotional energy. When we don't know how things are going to turn out, Or for example, if we're making a change and we don't know anymore what our routine is going to involve, we don't know anymore what's going to happen on Monday or Tuesday or Friday. If we're in one place in our lives, typically we have routines that we rely on. But if we're shifting into something changing, suddenly those routines are going to get disrupted. And there's loss in that, and there's emotional reaction to that. When we don't know how things are going to turn out in the future, the brain tends to stay busy all the time, running scenarios and worrying about timing and money and what other people's reactions will be. And that constant mental effort is tiring, even if we don't realize that that's really what's happening. For example, imagine a relationship change. So you might be unsure whether to stay, leave, or redefine a relationship in your life. And that uncertainty follows you everywhere. And you replay conversations, read things into silences, and feel emotionally worn down, even on days when nothing new has actually happened. And again, this is involved with the safety idea, because if you're in a relationship with someone, and this can be a personal relationship or even a business relationship, you've developed routines. You've developed a certain security with that person, even if the relationship itself isn't necessarily secure. At least you know what to expect because you've been in this place. You know what this is like. And so when you're thinking about changing that, again, you're experiencing loss. Because there's going to be a loss of this feeling of I know what to expect, because now you're shifting into I really don't know what to expect. So again, your whole feeling of safety and security can be threatened. And the third reason this feels so emotionally difficult is our sense of identity is shaken. And this part is huge. Transitions don't just change what your life looks like on the outside. They dig deep into how you see yourself on the inside. And when your sense of self starts to loosen up, that can feel really unsettling. Let's talk, for example, about someone who may be considering a change in their purpose in life. So you might realize that the path you've been on no longer fits you, but you don't yet know what does. That can leave you feeling totally unanchored and questioning all the choices you've made up till now and wondering who you are without the role you've had all this time. So we can imagine a mom who's been a full-time mom her whole entire life, and now she's an empty nester. I see this with people all the time. This is a huge shift, and it can be really emotionally difficult because when your identity is tied up in being mom, and suddenly the kids don't need you anymore, who does? I mean, you start feeling like, gosh, what am I doing here? Do I have any purpose here anymore? And everything that you relied on before is suddenly like gone, and it feels like you're kind of standing on air, I think, because you're not really sure what your next step is. There's nothing really to grab onto as far as who am I now? This big question of identity can be hugely difficult to answer at that point when we're shifting it. And that can create a lot of emotions. You can feel the grief and the loss for not having the identity you used to have. And then you can feel really scared about finding a new identity. Or even if you feel kind of where you want to go, you can feel uncertain about whether that new identity will fit you, about whether you'll be able to do as well as that person as you did as a mom. And that's just a small example, but hopefully you can tell what I'm saying here as far as the identity shift that we go through when we're going through a life transition is a really humongous part of it that we have to pay attention to. So once we realize why this phase feels so emotionally difficult, the next question usually comes fast, and it is, what am I supposed to do with all these emotions? Before we talk about the strategies and the next steps you can take, there's something important to understand about how to move through this phase without making it harder than it already is. So this is where it helps to change how we think about this phase we're in. A life transition isn't just a problem to solve. And I know I've felt that often in my past, even my recent past. I have felt like if I come to a place of transition where something needs to change, I have a real desire to solve the problem and move on. And it's really frustrating when it doesn't work that way, because it never does. We have to realize that this is more like a period of transformation or formation. Something new is taking shape during this time, even if you can't see it clearly yet. So I'd like you to think of it like a baby chick inside the egg. And during the development stage, everything is tender about that little chick. They're really fragile at that point, but they're forming, so nothing is finished. And the shell that once provided protection is slowly breaking down as they become more and more mature. But what is emerging isn't ready to face the world yet. This little chick needs warmth and steadiness and safety and time before it's fully ready to break out. And that's what this phase of transition is like, emotionally. We're more sensitive because something is forming inside of us, and we're more reactive because the old structures that held steady are loosening. And we tend to be more tired because growth takes a lot of energy, even when it's invisible growth. And if we treat this phase like something we have to push through and toughen up and get done, it usually backfires. Trust me, I've seen it. Pressure cracks what's still fragile. So if we're still in this stage and we're putting pressure on ourselves to decide already and get to the next step, that actually makes it worse for us because it makes the emotional experience worse. It makes the whole thing feel more stressful, and it tends to shortchange the time and the nurturing that we need to become this full new version of ourselves. What actually helps is thinking of yourself as that chick inside that egg, and you want to nurture yourself through this time. Your main job during a transition like this isn't to have all the answers or find all the answers immediately. It's to take care of what's emerging in you. So if your main job right now is care rather than certainty, the real question becomes, what does nurturing yourself actually look like in the middle of a life transition? Here are 3 ideas about that. So first, try this. Lower the pressure to figure it out. And I know this isn't easy because I feel this pressure too. We want to figure it out and move on, but try to lower the pressure on yourself to do this. When something new is forming, the clarity usually comes later. So pushing yourself to make big decisions or explain everything to everybody else or lock in a plan too early can create unnecessary stress. Give yourself permission to sit in these questions without forcing answers. And just listen to what your life is telling you and make peace with any little tiny steps you can take at the time. And I know this is kind of a tall ask because what we're doing is asking ourselves to sit in the discomfort of this place. But I have found that when I take just a few minutes to sit back and tell myself, you don't have to understand everything right now. You don't have to make all the decisions right now. You can do this day by day. We can take little steps at a time. When I give myself even just 5 minutes to talk to myself this way, it helps calm the emotional storm. And that's what we're trying to do here because we need to give ourselves time to move through this space, to complete the transformation. And so what we're trying to do is manage the emotional reactions as we go through that. Second, protect your energy more than usual. So what does this mean? Well, transitions take more out of you than you realize. And what I mean by that is as we're going through a transition, we're still living our lives, right? We're still probably going to work. We're still managing our homes. We're still supporting our families and our friends. We're still being active in the community. It's not like life stops. I think instead what we have to do is just protect our energy and understand that we're probably going to need more rest. We're going to need more time for daydreaming, for brainstorming, for allowing ourselves to hear what our lives are telling us. We'll probably need more walks in nature. We probably need more quiet music. We need to protect this energy that we have because if we don't, we're going to wring ourselves out and then we're going to have even more emotional difficulties. We're going to be more irritable. We're going to perhaps even suffer more health problems because the emotional toll is so high. And third, try to choose safety over exposure. So when you're in a fragile phase like this, be selective about who you talk to. And this is important because you may be thinking about doing something different with your life. And you have to be careful who you share those thoughts with, because some people will be supportive of you, but many people are going to think about how your decision is going to affect them. The instant somebody starts questioning what you're doing, or worse, starts casting a negative shadow on it, it's going to increase your emotional stress. So be careful who you talk to and how much input you're taking in from outside sources. Constant opinions or pressure from others or comparison with others can shut down your own growth. So your investigation of the week. This week, try something different. Instead of trying to solve your transition, focus just on noticing it. Once a day, pause and ask yourself, so what feels most tender right now? Don't look for the most logical answer. Pay attention to what feels strained, fragile, or unsettled. Then ask yourself one more question. What would help me take care of this today? And your answer might point toward maybe more rest, fewer demands, a quieter day, or a conversation with someone who feels safe. Once you have your answer, see if you can follow through on it. If you want to keep working with this more intentionally, I've created a free short guide called the Signals Journal. It walks you through 7 common signals that often show up when your life is asking for a change. You'll find the link to that below. And if you feel like sticking around, check out the next video on the end screen, which will help you with navigating this life change you're in. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.